Hello. Great. Thanks everyone for coming out tonight. This event is going to be the first in our series of artist interviews that are going to be in conjunction with the artist installations in our storefront window gallery. It's part of the city's Woonasquatucket River Arts project. We want to thank the City of Providence's Art, Culture, Tourism Department who made this possible through funding from the National Endowment for the Arts. The Woonasquatucket River Arts project will be taking place between October of 2018 and run through July of next year. As part of this project, to bring attention to our river greenway, there will be performance projects along the river by the Manton Avenue Project, the Wilbury Theater Group. There'll be sculptural animal habitats developed by the Woonasquatucket River Watershed Council in the Steel Yard, and a lighting installation by WaterFire Arts. And the Dirt Palace is commissioning 6 artists to make work for our storefront window gallery that's in conversation with the river, its habitat, history, and the future plans for the neighborhood greenway. Our first artist of the series is Daniella Ben-Bassat. Tonight she will be in conversation with artist Cody Ross about her installation and work. Thank you everyone for coming out.
Hello. There's so many people here. I have the pleasure of introducing Daniella and her project, EELS in Olneyville Square, Proof. Daniella is the current Dirt Palace storefront gallery window artist. She's a resident of the Dirt Palace now, and she's a brilliant artist and musician. I sheepishly bought one of her famous Take My Identity Please beer koozies from her like probably 5 years ago, and have been a fan ever since. With an interest in making paintings, music, and sound sculptures that reveal the presence of the mystical in the mundane, she draws inspiration from trash, nature, spirituality, and psychedelic culture. Her work aims to exist in a tenuous space that warbles between morphing, abstraction, and the material of the every day. All right, welcome to EELS.
Hi.
All right. So you have this obsession with eels.
I'm obsessed. Is this on? Yeah.
Maybe we should switch. Because I have the tinny one.
Do you want? Okay.
I'm open.
Hello.
That's better.
Yeah, I found out about eels in Olneyville kind of late in the game. I was at a friend's dog's, I can't remember if it was a friend's dog's birthday party or a 4th of July party, but something like that, and people were just casually throwing chicken bones into the water, and I was like, what are you doing? And just flippantly talking about eels in the Woonasquatucket, so I couldn't get enough that night, and I just started researching obsessively.
And then, so you talked about it a lot with other people, and then you were asked to do this project?
Yeah. Seemed to be a good fit for the project.
Yeah. So then, what was your first instinct as far as what the project was going to be in form?
I wasn't really sure. I've never had a situation where I was just like so obsessed with something that already existed.
Say more about that.
I mean, like, the eels are amazing. It's amazing that they exist in the river around us, and a lot of people don't know about it. And it's kind of this, like, they have this cult following, sort of. You kind of have to be, like, in the underground to find out about them. I'm just kidding. But, wait, what was I talking about? Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I don't usually make work that is about something that kind of like already exists in this really incredible way. And I found myself just continuing to be like fascinated by the fact that they were there, and then that was like enough for me that it was hard at first to kind of like push that. Yeah, so I decided to start by trying to take some underwater footage with the help of my friend Al, and then again had the same problem where I was like, oh my god, this footage is so cool. Like, what am I gonna do? Make, I don't know, eel replicas, which would be cool, but I don't know. I just kept watching the videos and being like, wow.
So let's talk about the day that you took the footage, because there's an instrument that you created that's really just a remarkable object
Yes.
that I think we should take a look at if you would like to
Okay.
bring it up.
Yeah.
But talk about it first, please.
Okay. So I knew that eels liked chicken, so I I went over to Atlantic Mills with like 12, I think a 12-piece chicken nugget, and like a long metal rod and some tape. And the idea was to kind of like dangle chicken on the rod with like a camera attached to it somehow. And the eels would gravitate towards the chicken pieces and we would get this footage. It turned out that the rod wasn't long enough, so we ended up using a 2x4 that we could kind of submerge, and I think it's better if I just show a photo.
It's just so good.
So, right here we have the chicken nugget taped on with some, I think, Gorilla tape, yeah. Then this is the GoPro, also taped, and another chicken nugget here. So the idea was to get as much full, like footage of the front of the eels kind of eating the chicken nuggets, you know. And then also, I mean, my initial plan actually was to throw chicken nuggets into the water and they would just kind of swim around and get them. But they really gravitated towards the ones that were kind of underwater on this 2x4 for whatever reason. I think they like to eat food that is not floating. But I can show, should I show a video?
Of?
The submersion.
Yeah, please.
I think, well, this is one from above. So you can see the 2x4 is kind of sticking out of the water, and then underneath is the camera and the GoPro and the chicken nuggets. And you can see, if you look, you can see the eels kind of swimming around from above. Yeah, they're just going at the chicken nugget.
Amazing.
And then here's another, this is a little bit more of a professional shot. So this is from the GoPro on the 2x4 with the chicken nuggets attached. You can kind of see where we were. Probably familiar scenery.
Were you behind Atlantic Mills?
Yeah, around Total Fabrication.
So much suspense.
So yeah, I think it's kind of cool to see the thing being submerged, just get an idea of what's going on.
And the way that the 2x4 kind of worked with the chicken nuggets is that there are all these like kind of terrifying approaches where the eels are coming at the camera.
That's a chicken nugget.
Grabbing it.
Yeah, they actually got really aggressive. They were like just like fighting for the chicken nuggets, because there weren't that many on the actual 2x4, but they were just like throwing their bodies at this thing, just like, and that tape is pretty strong too. They're just like ripping with all their might. It's kind of an intense experience. They were also like fighting, there were eels fighting not directly in front of us, but in the background. Something happened over there that I'm not sure what was going on, but there was just like a...
It's terrifying.
It was terrifying. But yeah, that's enough of this one.
So, do you think eels are beautiful?
I do. Do you mean like
Visually, that's what I mean.
I think so. I mean, the way they move is pretty stunning. And I think there's something beautiful about the fact that these things are living underwater around us and that we don't necessarily know very much about them. And they kind of go through a lot physiologically, which we'll talk about later. But their whole story is pretty poetic and beautiful.
This is true. So when I saw the 2x4, it made me think about your work and sort of the way that technology fits into it, because there's a lot of continuity between like that, the site of that object, and like the site of some of your other pieces that are more music-based, where you have like sort of corralled all of these bizarre like motors or like objects that are like continuing to move despite you or around you, and they are moving sort of chaotically, but you like are sort of wrangling them at the same time, like you, but they're sort of exposed also. I wanted to, is it possible to look at just a sample of that?
Sure. Yeah.
So one of them, you most recently were doing some, you were doing a residency at the Kenkisi Farm Project
Yes.
this summer, and you were working on this totally bonkers music project that involved this stalk sort of like spinning wildly next to you, and it was supposed to be obscuring a light, what was it?
Yeah, like a light sensor.
Like over and over again as it was spinning in the air. And that was supposed to sort of like change and manipulate your music like as it was spinning.
Yeah, it was like an optical tremolo. So when there was a shadow over the light sensor, and in this case the shadow is from this piece of Queen Anne's lace, the signal of the like actual sound would warble. So, yeah.
Crazy. Do you want to play that really briefly? Just
Yeah.
to like...
I don't know if the sound really matters, but...
saw that 2x4, I was thinking about this project and how it's like makes more sense to me.
Oh yeah. Now, I didn't even think about that really, but sort of constant like theme of haphazardly put together materials and by any means necessary. Like.
Right. I mean, they're sort of haphazard, but they're also like highly orchestrated. Like you have like this, you talked about how difficult it was to find like the right motor to make it move that way. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like this weird, like thin line between not paying attention at all to the materials or like what they actually need to do, and paying too much attention so that like the thing you make ends up being kind of soulless or like boring.
Yeah. Can you talk just a little bit about your relationship to technology, like in your work, but also outside of it, maybe even in the class that you're taking now?
Oh, sure. Well, what? Which part of my relationship with technology?
The way that you've talked about using technology in your artistic practices is like has an ideological component. Like you have a way of talking about like the smoothness of technology as opposed to like the way that you expose it in a particular way.
Yeah. So I do a lot of work with electronics and motors and microcontrollers, but I always want it to be obvious to the person looking at it, like what it was made with or like what's going on. It's like just as important to me that people see like the inside of something as the outside. And I think if I'm like thinking about technology on a larger scale, I think it can be an important thing to like expose the innards of like whatever you're using, because I think that we're getting used to like as a society like not really understand what's going on the inside of something, but just like assume that we have no control over it, or that like this thing is happening outside of our control and like there's nothing we can do about it, or there's just like we couldn't begin to understand it or something. So I like to think about the opposite situation where you can kind of just like see what's going on even if it's not working, and think about it in that way.
Can you tell me what happened to the motor during your
Oh,
performance?
yeah. I was using like a windshield wiper motor in this video. This was the night before the actual performance. And I had it on for a really long time, and it overheated, and while I was performing with it, it caught on fire.
See, it's cool. Exposed technology.
Right, yeah. It was a little bit of a disaster. It wasn't a big fire, it was put out.
Cool.
I blew it out.
Great. Cool. Let's switch back to EELS.
Okay.
Do you want to put on the EEL video again?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Get this out of here.
So when we first saw this footage, or when I first saw this footage, it looked like a nature documentary to me, or like something like tropical. It was like really remarkable what was actually underneath the surface of the river, and I think it sort of, just in looking at it, it sort of opens up this visual space that I think is hard to grasp only because the Woonasquatucket is sort of untouchable, sort of in the cultural imagination. You're not really supposed to go in it, or you're not supposed to like eat anything out of it, but this sort of visualizes what's actually happening underneath.
Yeah.
Did you have expectation? Is this what you expected at all?
No. I wasn't expecting it to be so clear. It's also got this like strange turquoise color to it that, yeah, you think of like when you like look at people's vacation videos or whatever. I didn't expect like there to be such an abundant like array of fish and eels just like swimming all over the place. This is a good.
See, it grosses me out, to be honest. I mean, I love it, but
Yeah, I mean, even like the little specks of chicken nuggets that are like thrown onto the surface of the water look really beautiful somehow. I don't know if it was like the GoPro or what, but yeah, I wasn't expecting it to be so striking or clear. I thought it was going to be just like a muddy mess, which I was excited about too, but.
And that sort of changed or like set a direction for you as far as the way that the project manifested.
It did. In terms of like an installation, I just kept watching the videos and like just getting really stuck because they were so good. I just wanted to show people the videos.
Cool. So the title of the project
Expose.
has the word proof in it. As if, so it's not necessarily like a documentary project. It's not like, doesn't necessarily have like a conservationist tone. It seems like almost it has the tone of a UFO sighting.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely just like this thing exists, and beyond that, I think with like UFO stuff, like the foremost goal is to like prove that these things are there, which I guess really relates to like how I felt about this video. I just like wanted to be like, oh, these are here, and kind of expose them.
And I think like in creating this project and sort of putting it in a public place, it has generated all of this like gossip and hearsay and like other kinds of sort of like lay knowledges about like the existence of eels in the river.
Yeah, it's been really funny. Like everybody who talks to me about these eels, these specific eels, always mentions chicken. Like everyone just knows that like the eels like chicken. I'm sure they like other food, but like just we all just feed them, or like, we all just know that they want chicken. But I think if I talk to anyone else about eels outside of Providence, Rhode Island, like this would not be the narrative at all. And it's specific to chicken too. It's not like. So I think that's really interesting.
Well, it's like a cool urban mythology about like creatures that, are kind of just like regular animals that have existed there for a long time. But
Right.
I think the combination of like, with all of the industry that has been in Providence and has since like vacated it, there's sort of the sense that like it's unlivable, or like creatures in there like don't necessarily, I don't know. There's like
They don't thrive.
Yeah. Whereas these have been coming up this river for a millennia.
Yeah.
So I think what's interesting is that all of the industry around this area that left and caused all this industrial pollution, sort of the wake of that is that there has been a lot of people who took advantage of the space and sort of have been using the spaces in the area for like subcultural work and artistic work. And it seems like that has only built the approach that people have to the eels as sort of like exciting cultural objects.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's really nice to hear what people have to say about the animals and like the wildlife in the Woonasquatucket, like whether it's just like some result of pollution or mutation or like any kind of like like half urban legend sounding thing, like half fact. It like it's cool to like hear how it just turns into these crazy, like almost like sci-fi stories about the stuff going around like in our surroundings.
Do you have an example?
Oh my God. I don't have, maybe somebody in the audience does. I don't have like a specific example that I can like remember. I feel like I've like heard like of like weird animals with mutations or like animals doing crazy things. Somebody actually sent in a tip to the eel hotline about how they saw a deer running in the Woonasquatucket. But yeah, if anyone has any stories, I would love to hear them. But yeah.
So I've seen the Woonasquatucket termed as a chronic technological disaster, which is a kind of intense way of putting it. But do you see eels as somehow like anomalous or like asynchronous, sort of like out of time as far as the river? Is that part of their appeal?
I think that was appealing. Yeah, like especially before I like started learning a lot about eels, it seemed totally asynchronous. Like these kind of, to me, like unusual animals were just like thriving in what seemed like a really polluted zone. It seemed like totally, I was like, oh, they must be mutants. Like, no, like surely this is like specific to these eels in this river or something, because it just seems so like unimaginable that this would be happening. But yeah, so especially before I learned more about like eels being really less affected by polluted water than other animals and all of this other stuff.
So eels seem like to be more amenable to kind of like gossipy or like paranoid types of knowledge production because they remain sort of enigmatic and obtuse despite sort of like, you know, the kind of scientific analysis that you would expect of different biologies. So I think a big example was that by 2015, only one eel had actually been tracked to the Sargasso Sea, which is where all of the eels go at the end of their life to spawn.
Right.
And we talked about like a million other examples together, and I thought it would be good to just get into some eel facts.
Yeah, let's get into them.
Cool. So eels, where do they begin?
Where do they begin? Well, they begin as larvae, right, in the Sargasso Sea.
As eggs first.
As eggs, and then as
they
larvae.
hatch in like enormous quantities, like millions and millions per
That's
eel.
crazy. And then they float for a year to fresh water. They're just like drifting towards these different like rivers and areas for an entire year, which blew my mind.
All over the East Coast too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
as they approach what was called the continental shelf, they metamorphose into what are called glass eels. Well, they hatch from their eggs. They become a different thing called the leptocephali, and then they hatch into glass eels, which are transparent, small eels, which are apparently a delicacy and like are poached in a lot of different ways. It's like a bad situation.
right, glass eel.
Yeah.
I think I've heard of that. Yeah, and then as they approach the shore, they become elvers. And once they're elvers, once they get into fresh water, they become like crazy carnivores. It's probably when they start eating chicken. And yeah, I guess I've also keep reading that they're primarily active at night, which is wild because they're so active during the day. I can't imagine. When I first found out about the eels, it was nighttime, and I was trying to we were all trying to shine our flashlights into the water to see them better, but it didn't work. I would love to go back with like a mag light.
Are you scared of them?
No. Are you?
Yeah. So they're yellow eels in freshwater,
Yeah.
and that's the majority of their life.
Yes.
And they can stay there from, like, what was the range?
The thing that has made this feel like the most like a UFO like research study is how many different facts and figures I think that I've been able to find. I mean, I've read that the life range is between 20 and 50 years, which seems like a huge range, but...
Right, and I've read also that they eventually mature into silver eels, but the time at which they mature into silver eels, which is just a totally separate process, is like undetermined. Like they can do it whenever they want, and there's no trigger.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, I was trying to figure out in this video, like if they were silver or yellow eels. I couldn't. My level of expertise is not high enough.
We need more footage.
But it was fun to watch for the eels and like try to deduce as much as I could.
So the yellow eels are like freshwater eels, and then they mature into silver eels, which is sort of the final stage of their life where they change physiologically as they begin to travel towards the ocean again.
Yeah, they go through so many wild changes.
Tell me about them.
Okay. I know, well, I have to read this actually. I know their eyes change, their retina shapes change so that they can adjust to salt water more readily, like, not just the water, like the salinity, but also the darkness. Like all of these intense things happen to their retinas to like prepare them for their migration back to the sea. Their digestive tract shrinks because they stop eating, right?
They cannot eat during their travel back to the ocean.
Right. That's because the idea is that they go to the ocean. They are born in the sea, then they come to fresh water, they spend 20 to 50 years, and then they migrate back to the salt water, and after they spawn, they die.
Which is called it's called a semiparous species, which means that they only reproduce once, and then they die. The article that I read said they have a large and fatal reproductive event.
It's funny because another article described this as a romantic story.
You don't think so?
I mean, all of it.
Love a large and reproductive.
It all works. It's all great. What else happens? Their pectoral fins enlarge to make them better swimmers. Their skin gets thicker, probably to kind of deal with the cold depths that they swim in. I think they go like 2,000 feet underwater. Yeah.
And they have sort of a magnetic feature. I can't remember what it's called.
Oh, yeah. They have like a small spot of magnetite on their foreheads, which is like I don't really understand this, but it helps them know where to go, basically, and like know where the current is.
Right, because they navigate through what is like, they are seeking sort of the warmest water, in
Right.
theory. You like using this magnetite thing. And they eventually end up in the Sargasso Sea, where they spawn and die.
Right.
It's a wild life.
And there's also like a really wide range, like they decide to migrate at different times, which is really interesting. There's no like set time that they migrate. Like, I don't think like a set time of year, but that could be wrong. But
So they have sort of like this arcane life cycle. Like everything is, I think for a long time there was not even any clarity as to whether each like individual stage of their life was like a separate animal or like a continuation of their like life cycle. And it's like only within the past 50 years that they've like figured out that it's sort of a continuous process.
mm-hmm.
And you sort of said it was a poetic
Yeah.
life. What do you think is poetic about it, for you maybe personally,
About
their life cycle?
Oh, well, I think I especially thought it was poetic that they were kind of swimming around our neighborhood. But also, I mean, I think everything about it is probably poetic if you think about it. I mean, I don't know. I think just all of the journey that they go through and changes that their bodies go through. It's just like so much happens for like just so that these eels can spawn. You know, they like go all the way to fresh water, then they like live there for 50 years and like wait until they can spawn, and then they go all the way back to the sea, and then they do, and then they're done. So there's something. It's like a lot of work.
Yeah. This is a total tangent, I guess, but does that relate in any way to like, you've talked about perseverance as a way that you have sort of, as part of your artistic process, is like persevering through the challenges of like assembling sort of like bizarre technological apparatuses to like perform one task that will never be seen again.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I like to make stuff that sort of flails repetitively. Just like some kind of like perseverance in doing this like absurd thing over and over and over again that like becomes sort of like beautiful or like noble or something, and funny. And I think I guess that's how I think about a lot of stuff. But yeah, you could think about the eels in that way too.
The beauty of perseverance.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Great. Well, should we keep talking, or should we do some interviews,
I don't know.
questions?
Yeah, I also would like to know if anyone has seen any mutated animals in the Woonasquatucket. Or questions. What? How did it get there? That's crazy. Wow. Hmm. Wow.
I think something about that I was going to mention was that the sort of like UFO element, the element of like there being something like some sort of eerie or supernatural about like the river itself, and also having sort of like a conflicting narrative with like the official narrative,
Right.
like was that the EPA was doing lots of studies on the river over a relatively long period of time, and would find contaminants in eels because their body fat like holds mercury and PCBs and things like that, and weren't sort of properly. I think in the end, I think it was in 1998, there was dioxin found in animal species. I might be bungling this, but and then they did a sediment test the following year, and there was dioxin found in the sediment,
Wow.
which is like a cancerous and otherwise dangerous chemical, toxic chemical for humans, which is just. And then, so the EPA was sort of criticized as not properly distributing that knowledge, and received a lot of criticism from a lot of community organizations and people. Whereas a lot of people also were sort of felt as if they already knew that the river was contaminated. Like there was this sort of general knowledge that people were wary of the river and its potential contamination because they had all witnessed this industrial fallout, basically. So yeah, I'm just thinking about that, like with relation to like projects like this, for example, where you're sort of generating a knowledge that like comes from the bottom up and sort of has like sort of the tone of like being not in opposition necessarily, but in relation to like an official knowledge, like an official science discourse or something like that.
Right. Yeah, like despite it all, these things thrive. Which is, yeah. Laura. Oh my God. Wow. Smart. Crafty. Cool. Yeah, my main Woonasquatucket memory, other than the eels, is I went rafting down the river once, and there were lots of like computer monitors like bobbing in the water everywhere. But that's not wildlife, really. Yeah.
So I spend a lot of time on the Greenway. I live right next to it, and that's how I commute to work every day. So, like Laura, I've seen a lot of really interesting wildlife. I've seen coyotes.
Wow.
I've seen a deer with two baby deer. I once saw a fox with two teenage kids that were really
Teenage.
and I've also seen there's like a big turkey family that lives on the Greenway that roosts into the trees at night. And if you're there at dusk, you can see them like all
Wow.
up in the trees.
That's so cool.
And I've spent a lot of time thinking about what it is that's so interesting, but also so uncanny about urban wildlife. Because I think we have this idea that, you know, the city is where there are buildings and people, and then rural areas, that's where nature is. That's where plants are, and that's where animals are. And there's something about seeing pretty abundant wildlife in the city that's sort of contrary to our idea of what cities are and what they do. And then also I get this feeling sometimes personally that I think it's almost like they're ghosts from what the land was like before we had built it up.
Huh, that's cool.
Doing here, like why are they walking around? How did they get here? It's almost
Yeah.
so I don't know if you have any thoughts about like what's so uncanny about seeing stuff under the river, because I admit that the first time I found out about the eels, I was like, that's so much weirder than anything else I've ever
Yeah, I mean, I think a huge part of it is just like things that are underwater we don't know about. So that just automatically makes it like different and just like shocking almost. And then like the other part of it is just like eels are sort of really weird creatures. And once you find out that they're kind of like swimming around your zone, it's that just like as on its own is, I think, really interesting. And then I think I don't know about everyone else, but I just like I assume that things can't thrive in that water. So that on top of everything else, I think, makes it like this weird sort of like unreal phenomenon.
Yeah, I like the relationship, or I like the idea of ghosts. Or it feels similar to like a UFO sighting or like something like out of urban mythology, but maybe transposed onto something like more spiritual. Yeah.
Yeah, it also seems really ghostly because I was reading that 99% of the eels were like or like the population had decreased by 99% or something. So I was reading that and then I was like, well, there's so many, like, right? Yeah, yeah. So that seems kind of ghostly too. Yeah, Andrew. I haven't talked to too many people about it, but I mean, even people who live like in the mills or whatever are like, oh yeah, like boring. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. There's some people I've talked to have been just like completely not shocked.
I think there are also folks who were eating the eels for a long time before, I mean, obviously for a very long time, but in sort of the recent past, were eating eels out of the river, and that's when sort of like when the EPA found contaminants in eels, there was sort of a big like public project to like educate people about how dangerous they were to human health.
Yeah. Oh yes. Just one second, let me pull it up. There's an eel hotline. I would love for anyone with any information to contact. I got a few today. I don't know if you guys can see. It's a little grainy, but I got a few tips today, some facts. This is what came in just today, so imagine how much information we can amass together.
What were the anonymous tips?
Yes.
What do they say?
Okay. The top one says, based on a 2007 study, there was an estimated Olneyville eel population of 50 to 75,000. That's a lot. According to a more recent study in 2015, the population has remained roughly the same at an estimated 60,000 eels. The next one says, I've seen some eels, they love meat. The next one says, I saw the eels play in Somerville 10 years ago. That's a band. All information about eels is welcome. Eels will fight each other for chicken. This next person said they got obsessed with eels when they lived next to the river. And then the last one says, eels love chicken bones and their migration patterns are very mysterious. So this is just the beginning.
There really is a lot of chicken talk.
It's all chicken. It's like...
What do the eels really eat when you're not feeding them chicken?
They eat, they're carnivores. They eat like fish, small birds. Yeah, baby ducks I saw, yeah. Probably just anything. Someone say rabbits? Yeah. Allison.
So they're hatched, they like float as little baby eels to the shore from the Sargasso Sea, or like the Sargasso Sea is like way out
Yeah.
past Bermuda, but then they like float their way to the freshwater area.
Yeah, it takes a year. Yeah. It's really crazy. It's just all of their like life cycle, everything takes a really long time, it seems. Like they're in Olneyville for a really very long time. Elodie.
I've read that eels can travel up to 2 miles on land.
Oh,
I was really interested to find that out, and I wonder how it would be if you just saw one when you were
oh my God.
slithering, and I was wondering what you thought of that.
Yeah, I think it is true. I read that they can live up to 3 hours on land and they breathe through their skin. So I don't know what I would do if I saw an eel.
You don't?
No.
I would run away.
I'm curious about what like prompts them to go onto land. Maybe chicken. Over there.
If anyone's interested, there's a blue heron that lives at the top.
Oh yeah.
Harry the heron.
Wow.
First called him.
Cool.
Yeah, he migrates every October. Leaves. Comes back for 7 years now. Lives at the lake at the top of the river.
There's just one.
Just one, Harry.
Wow. That's... Uh-oh. We've got company. Yeah. Matt?
I guess I'll give my little catalog. I hadn't thought about it. We've had bald eagles. We've had ravens. A pair of ravens that live near the like a slaughterhouse, and they all day all they do is pick meat out of the dumpster and carry it.
Where?
I don't know where the nest is, but that's all they do all day.
That's crazy.
And so those, for the ravens are cool. We have otters. That's pretty neat. I've only seen otters twice. I saw a dead one and then I saw one.
Oh, I would love to see an otter.
I had a question about how far up do the eels go, and do the dam removals like help them to fish ladders help them get further up the river?
I think what I was reading is I don't know if this is part of the same thing. They swim in like opposite directions, I guess, from the fish that the fish ladders help. So I don't think they go like through, but maybe at the end of their life cycle they go like one time. I think they do, but I'm not sure.
I know that the dams are pretty destructive as far as their health. Like,
Yeah, the dams are bad.
yeah.
But they're doing like a lot of dam removal, I think, which is cool. Yeah. Oh. Wow. Cool. Cool. Thank you. Yeah.
Here I'm leading to a question. Do they have any natural so-called predators?
This was kind of there was a weird answer online anyway, where it said basically like not exactly.
I mean humans, but
Right, humans and I think some like larger birds, but
whoa.
but they don't have a ton of predators. For
Not
whatever
in the
reason.
fresh water. I think in the salt water they do.
Yeah.
But around here, I think they're pretty relaxed. Corey. I haven't seen anything about them needing to stay warm. But again, I am not an expert. They're cold? Yeah, I don't know. Tim, do you know? Tell me. Oh yeah, I saw that. It's crazy. Any other comments, thoughts? Tom? I have. Probably not again though. Yeah.